major attack on Turkish troops by Kurdish rebels.
A deadly assault on its army.
Hakkari'nin Çukurca ilçesindeki jandarma ve polise ait.
October 19th, Kurdish separatists attacked the Turkish army on the border with Iraq, killing 24 soldiers. October 20th, the Turkish government hits back with airstrikes on Kurdish bases. October 21st, Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan calls for a private, off-the-record meeting with more than 50 of Turkey's top newspaper editors and media managers. The meeting lasts 3 hours.
This was kind of an extraordinary meeting. I think it was the first meeting of its kind with such wide participation from the media.
What Erdogan did was he summoned newspaper groups and said, well, look, now is the time to preach a patriotic message. Let's not parade the grief and let's not try and exploit the grief of the victims of these incidents.
The Kurdish issue in Turkey is extremely sensitive, and Erdogan's message to the media was to watch the tone of their coverage. A few hours after the meeting, the 5 major news agencies released a joint statement. They pledged not to broadcast news that incites the public to violence, panic, chaos, hate or enmity. But a journalist on the inside observed that Erdogan was pretty much preaching to the converted.
The media in that meeting were more for censorship and the limitations and putting limits on expression than the Prime Minister and the representatives of the government themselves. So that was really a meeting which showed me, and I think some of my colleagues there, that the media in Turkey is not necessarily standing up for its right of freedom of expression yet.
Not for the first time, the Turkish government has taken a very robust and muscular attitude to different media organizations over the coverage of the violence.
The newspaper proprietors are only too delighted to say yes sir, and do everything that the government tells them because they are not independent.
Ve 24 şehidimizin isimleri belli oldu. Şehit askerlerimizin isimleri şöyle.
Acı haber bu kez Hakkari'den geldi. Teröristlerin Çukurca...
One of the big issues in this story is terminology. The government calls the Kurdish fighters terrorists and wants the media to do the same. Generally, media within Turkey complies.
PKK'lı teröristler
Saldırıyı yapan teröristlerine karşı belirlenen teröristleri
Global media, however, are a different matter. Reuters, the world's largest multimedia news agency, calls the Kurdish fighters rebels, and it's proved controversial. In the first week of fighting, online reports said Turkish financial institutions boycotted Reuters, refusing interviews and financial information, until Reuters started referring to the PKK as a terrorist organization.
I think this particular episode of Reuters being protested or, according to the news, boycotted by some institutions in Turkey, it's just a reflection of the general nationalist mood in the country, and also the expectation in the country from the outside world to define the world in Turkey's own terms.
We tried contacting Reuters to find out if pressure had come from the Turkish government itself, but all we got back was a bland, generic statement. Reuters is committed to unbiased and impartial reporting, and, in line with our global editorial policies, Reuters does not refer to any organisation or individual as terrorists. Many say that when it comes to the Kurdish issue, and other political issues, the government doesn't have to push the media that hard.
I'm not sure that this attempt to punish Reuters is the work of the government. This is very much a sort of nationalist sentiment within the population at large.
I don't see, though, any particular Erdogan government involvement, because Turkish media always uses the term terrorists. Sometimes you don't need in Turkey to dictate anything on these national issues. Sometimes actually the media is sometimes more fiercely nationalist than the Erdogan government.
Global news organisations like Reuters, and even The Economist, which had a very public falling out with Erdogan during the June elections, are outside Turkey's jurisdiction. But for media outlets inside the country, facing off with the government can come at a high price. When Erdogan first came to power, he had a pretty good relationship with the conglomerate that controls more than 50% of the country's media, Doğan Yayın. But by 2005, the relationship had soured, and by 2009, the media giant was faced with a bill of $2.5 billion in back taxes. Many media watchers said it was punishment for critical coverage. In a series of legal battles, the bill has been slashed to $622 million, but the corporation has started a fire sale of its media assets to raise money. And if media corporations get taken down, what happens to individuals who try to speak out? Turkey has had a poor track record when it comes to the treatment of dissident reporters, and it seems to be getting worse. A study by the OCSE concluded that there are more journalists behind bars in Turkey than in either China or Iran. Earlier this year, investigative journalists Ahmet Sheikh and Nadim Şener were taken into custody on charges of membership in an ultra-nationalist organization, triggering mass protests across the country. Many are jailed under Article 301, an ambiguous law that bans the media from being critical of something called Turkishness.
Thousands of journalists have been convicted so far under this anti-terror law. You cannot put on the table bad practice against Kurds, against Armenians. You have the famous Article 301 condemning those who humiliate Turkish nations. And of course, we still have the law protecting the memory of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk.
Turkey is said to be reinventing itself in a rapidly changing region, and the AKP is often cited as an example of a successful Islamic government coexisting alongside democratic principles. But its record on freedom of expression belies that.
According to the Reporters Without Borders, Turkey ranked number 98 in the world in terms of media freedom in 2004. Today, Turkey ranks number 138 in the world. So there appears to be a declining standards of media freedoms in Turkey over the last 5 or more years.
Something clearly needs to change. Journalists could play a vital role, but only they can decide if they're up for the fight.
It's not up to the government to draw that line, and it's not up to, up to us to oblige with that line the government tries to draw. So the media has a very, very important role in helping to democratize the country even further. And I think the media should really stand up for its own freedom.